Gentlemen, RO number 1. Man, true to form, I said, hey, I was going to start on them here pretty quick. Well, here we are about 7-8 days into this month. So let's get a jump on it. Let me read the letter. I know you have a lot to do, so I'll make it short and sweet. I know you just started taking on new work again, and now 3 weeks later, you're a year full. Well, actually what happened is I was a year full in 1 day. I went out on September 1st and said, okay, I'm ready to take on work. And before about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd taken on enough work to keep me busy for most of the year. But that being said, you guys, a lot of them are like this. A lot of little Texas stars, that kind of stuff. So we're going to go really quick. And I'm pretty sure we'll burn through those 80 odd some ROs pretty fast. So I might be taking on work a little bit sooner, but I don't know. We're on RO number 1. We've got a long ways to go. And I've got other projects that are going on right now that will be coming to conclusion through this, but this is RO number 1. Okay. I'd like to thank you for taking on this box for repair. It means a lot to my father-in-law, 777. To have Mr. Worldwide BBI working on his amp. He's old school and have been on the air since the late 70s. To him, this Texas Star 500 is the shit. His days are now numbered. Oh, man. And he is now missing his box on his base. But he'll still find a way to get on the air daily. Oh, man, this sucks. It has... It's only been the way outside, his only way to the outside world. He has cancer, stage 4. And hospice care is here. CB is everything to him. I think he loves his radio more than my, I'm not saying that out loud, his better half. But I know it'd mean a lot to him to see his old box work again. So thanks again, BBI, from me and my father. Just stopped powering up. Well, some of you might know and some of you don't. I am completely sympathetic to this situation. Cancer has also come to visit my family in this last year, and then again, now here again in this last couple months. So I'm empathetic to that. Let's open up RO number 1 and see what we got to fix. I'm going to tell you guys a couple little things. If you ever get to see this corner of my bench, this space right here, I usually take all the case screws from whatever project and I put them in descending order. So if you guys see a pile of screws, a pile of screws, a pile of screws, pile of screws, pile of screws, that is from the projects that I currently have ongoing that I don't have all bagged up. This is stuff that's sitting here I'm going to get to in the next couple days. The other thing I want to say is kudos to the Patreon guys. The power that makes this channel rock and roll. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but in the last couple of videos, there hasn't been any ads in the videos. I have, because of the Patreons, we have now been able to finally take it to where I don't have any ads during the video at all. So if you're watching this and you're not watching this within the YouTube paid subscription, technically, there should not be any ads in this video. I have it set so it's not going to drop ads in the middle of the video. To help increase your guys' viewing amplifier porn experience, the Patreon group has grown to such that we don't have to do ads in the middle of the videos anymore, which I think is awesome. I hate ads. I flipping hate ads. So the complaint is it stopped powering up. And I already can see why. Down here underneath this bank of switches, let me get another Texas Star board. I should have just grabbed one. Because I have a feeling. Just had a feeling. Okay. Down here, you have positive 12 that comes from this rail here. So your 12 volt distribution comes in on this bus here. That's this same bus. You see these 3 dots? Those are called vias. Well, the vias pass through and they go to this little trace. This trace comes around, then there's another set of 3 dots, which is also vias. Well, now the trace goes on the top side. Well, that runs across and it comes over here and it powers this switch. So underneath the switches down here, there's a trace that runs right along across the top side of this board. I can see just visually looking at it that trace is muffed off. There is a phone book worth of things that can cause this. Most of the time it has something that is tied to the power on switch. It could be your bias circuit, it could be a couple different things. Sometimes what it is something loose floating around inside the cabinet, like a little piece of wire, which I'm not seeing. But we're going to go and hunt down that short. Let's see here. Let's grab a little flashlight. Yeah, it's totally fried. Okay, let's see if I can get us in position to see it. I think this angle will work. Let me grab a dental pick. Now, how I like to repair this is with a piece of wire. See, let's take a look down in here. You see this? This right here? That is a completely burned off trace. You see it? It's all lifted. This is like a little fusible link. We have the same thing go on with the with the Sweet 16s and the 1200s. They've got a little trace that acts like a fusible link. The question is why? What caused that to burn up? Sometimes what I like to do and what other guys like to do is they'll utilize this hole here, which is for the keyer circuit, which I've never seen hooked up on any Texas Star ever. We utilize this hole and we'll tie into the light bulb for the on-off switch. Sometimes something there will get shorted, but that is not the case here. So we're going to have to figure out, first we're going to have to peel this trace up. So there's a couple things we got to guard for. Is that trace, as you guys can see, is peeled up. So we have to physically remove this trace. We're talking hours worth of work to remove this switch bank. We're talking taking the whole board out, and then it takes a hot air system for us to float the switches out, or a lot of solder time where you solder and desolder, because this is a through board switch system, to pull the bank up to try and get in here and repair that trace. Or we simply come in here with an X-Acto knife and we'll cut it right at the via here, and then we'll cut it right on the edge of the board back here behind the switch. And then we'll peel all that wire out, that trace material. The reason we got to take that trace material out is because it's been so hot it's delaminated itself off the board, and at this point it could flex and move sometime in the future and short out to the switch body, which is ground. And then we'll be right back where we started. So what I'll probably end up doing is soldering onto the 3-hole via here, wrapping some wire around, and then soldering onto the trace here at the switch. And then with a voltometer, we're going to figure out where it's shorted at. So let me get in here with a razor knife and remove this little bit of burned up trace, and let's get back and let's complete the circuit, and let's figure out what's gone south the titties in here. Okay, my friend Cue Ball, this is out of a, well, it's not out of anything. He got one of these, was lucky enough to get one of these from Texas Star before they imploded. This is the trace that we're talking about, this one right here. And where ours is burnt is in this section, right here, between the via pad. They usually burn up right after the via pad, because it's the point of the highest resistance, right? I've even had them where they burn this trace off on the bottom, but this trace is bigger than right here, right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to cut the trace right about here on the board, and we're going to remove this amount of trace. So this has already been self-cauterized, self-sealing per se. We're going to go in and we're going to clean this up with a razor knife, and then we're going to cut the trace right here to save us from having a jumper from this pin to this pin here. Pretty straightforward. My question is, I've never seen one of these pop for no reason, right? It's one of them, well, that should never fail. It does, but not from the operation of the amp. So let's get the old razor knife out, and let's get in here and let's perform scalpel-ectomy to this thing. Okay, so I'm running the circuit here, and I'm going to grab a hold of the switch pack as a whole. So I've got the test probe go into the case and then go into the trace. Okay. I think I know what happened here. Theory is that there's a little ball of shmoo underneath the board. And when we take our on-off switch and we push directly in on it, there's no short. But let's say, just for a moment, that we take our switch and push it in and flex the board down when we're pushing it. But if we lift up, it doesn't short. It's a theory. The reason for that being is the switch, the way this works is our 12-volt shmoo comes in on this pin. Well, it goes back out on this pin, the pin that the light's hooked up to. Well, we flip the board over, that's this trace here. So this trace comes along, powers this switch. That comes along, goes around. It comes over and it feeds this post right here on the relay. So if we probe over here, we don't have a short. Now we have a short. Don't have a short. Now have a short. So okay, this has got me wondering a couple things. Yep, taking the board up. Okay, so the main thing we want to protect is this capacitor back here on the back of the board. We don't want to flex it around too much. But the rest of this stuff is pretty forgiving. Look at that. So here's our pass-through via our burn-up trace, but look at this. Point proven. The switch is just a little too, the leg is just a little too long. Well, we're not going to even mess around. We're going to come in here, we're going to, these are a little bit too long. And we're making contact here. So you can see the pattern of the switches. It's like, if we look really close here, let me rotate this so you can get a little better angle on it. Maybe the light will show it better. There is the two distinct scorch marks, but you can see where the other switches have been touching in the dust. I'd like to say it's the first time I've ever seen this. It is not. Okay, so what we're going to do now is there used to be a part of me, oh, I'll reflow all of this and da-da-da. It's not necessary. The other thing that I used to do is I'd solder down these washers. Now, a pro, what he does is we flip the board over and we hold them in place with a pair of hemostats and we just solder them in place. On the board, they'll never come off again. So I'm going to solder the washers on. I'm going to fire up the power of the El Dremel, and we're going to cut these down so they're never going to make shorted out contact again. We'll sand these back just very, very carefully. And then in this area, we're going to come and put down a little piece of capped on tape. What a lot of guys like to do, and I'm not a big fan of it, especially because of where this amplifier comes from, which is the islands. As you can see, moisture is a thing in Hawaii, right? Look at this. That's the set armature for the needle movement in the front of the meter. It's oxidizing from just being exposed to seawater. So I don't like to put cardboard inside of amps. It has a tendency to swell or it'll disintegrate. It's just not a good thing. So we're going to probably put down some fiberglass reinforced tape with a couple layers of capped on, which I know will never swell or deform or conduct or anything. There's a little bit of a cushion, but the main thing is to get this sanded down. Okay, well, at least this was easy for the most part. Straight up, pretty easy. Okay. So we got 2 layers of fiberglass reinforced tape with a layer of capped on that covers up these 2 banks of switches. Came in here and got the little Dremel out. Went, you just barely got to kiss it, just enough to knock the points off, right? So there's no high points left on this board. Then I had to come back and redo a couple of the solder joints here because they'd burbled out. They'd stuck out a little bit. The other thing I did is that the eyelet, the little washer here, I soldered it on, but I really schmoed on the solder. So this eyelet's actually sitting out a little bit more than what it was. I went ahead and did the repair. I utilized the via trace here on the front of the board and ran it over to the switch and rebuilt the switch in sitting position. If you could look at this at a straight on angle, which if I'm not lazy here and I move the camera, and we can get it to focus in the right spot. Yeah, you can see that the switch was installed wrong. This gap here is much more than this gap here. So the switch is actually sitting cocked like this. And that's what's led to all of our problems. But as you can see, that's now relatively smooth. And I went ahead and I put another piece of capped on tape up here. I mean, what is a little bit of capped on tape to protect us from having another catastrophic failure? I mean, this with a little bit of aluminum backing on it, they call, Mylar for the most part. And hell, that put us on the moon. Most of the insulation on the freaking lander was... Anyhow. Went ahead and washed the whole thing with rubbing alcohol to get all the dust from the Dremel off of everything. Went ahead and cleaned off the old thermal compound that was underneath here and replaced it with new. Scrubbed the bottom of the transistors. So now we're ready to fold this down and solder it all in place and screw it down and get all the wires hooked back up. So did you know that on the newer models, the only thing that holds the faceplate on is the variable knob that's on the front, which leads to a problem I like to call sloppy face. Not to be confused with poker face or Madonna's face. I don't know if you guys have seen Madonna lately. Whoa. She's like Kenny Rogers face going on. You know how Kenny Rogers was gracefully aging and then he showed up one year and it was like at the Oscars or something, and it looked like somebody grabbed him from behind the ears and went whoop. I don't know what's going on with Madonna. Anyhow, what I like to do is I'll take this, it's a double-sided stick tape that's made by Scotch, and it's paper thin, and it's fairly heat resistant. But I'll just run a couple strips of it down the face of the back side of the faceplate, so it sits between the faceplate and the main body of the cabinet. It just kind of helps not have sloppy face. You know, sloppy face. It's a real thing. It's a measured phenomenon, kind of like ghost wads. You guys are horrible, by the way. The amount of ghost watt memes that I have received in the last 2 weeks has been breathtaking, to put it mildly. For you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, there is a CB shop that uses this term called ghost watts, and it's kind of become a band-aid term for just darn near about everything. If you don't like how somebody's watt meter reads on their workbench, oh, those are ghost watts. If the radio is producing harmonics, which is making the amplifier produce harmonics, oh, those are ghost watts. If you've got too much modulation in your AM carrier and it's causing distortion, those are ghost watts. It has taken over the radio community. Well, I had a guy show up on one of my feeds, one of my posts on Facebook, and I'm sure his position was, I like to believe that people aren't really actually bad, that we all do know the difference between right and wrong, and we sometimes choose the wrong thing accidentally. So I'm going to go with the fact that he was, showing up with the best intentions at heart, and he made a statement along the lines, well, that amp should only do X amount of watts, or the rest of it is ghost watts. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it on. What are ghost watts? Go. I've gotten a million different definitions for this term now. Everybody and their brother showed up with their opinion of what it is. The thing is, it's not an actual quantifiable term. It's slang. It's overall urban slang, kind of like the term pill when we're talking about transistors. Oh yeah, you just change the pills out. It's a direct drop-in for the... It's not the proper term for the transistors. Everybody knows what it means, but it can be smeared around so much that I decided I'd start leading the fight against this trend, this phenomenon. I've gotten so many pictures of Steven Crowder sitting there with his coffee cup in hand, change my mind kind of thing. It's hilarious, and the different captions that are in it. The ghost watt memes. I love it. I think it's great. And what is amazing to me is some of these people out there in the universe, they don't get that this is a troll. Like, I'm making a joke of this, and they firmly believe I have no idea. Like, I'm dismissing the overall terminology. I'm not. I'm just not going to validate your point that this is a real word, real thing. It's not. It's never going to be. For you guys that are curious, this is the remnants of the trace that we removed. As you can see, it got a little scorched. So it actually broke like this. This was the side that was on the via side, and this was the side going back towards the switch, and it burned up something like that. So let's zoom in and let you guys look at that. Ghost watts. Changed my mind. Not a real thing. It's one of them things that you can argue all day about and still achieve absolutely nothing. and I thought it was funny. It has been hilarious to me to watch how many people have gotten really super serious about it and have shown up to the conversation to debate and be involved. And that's fun and all because it allows some activity in my group, and it's a neutral topic that nobody's going to get their feelings hurt over. At the end of the day, ghost swats aren't real. It's just a slang urban legend term. I get it. I've had one guy, he's so staunch in his belief, and he doesn't understand that this is a joke to me. And he goes, I am so sorry that you have failed. You have failed to understand the term that we are using to describe this phenomenon, because if you could grasp that, you would understand that it is real. All I can think is, man, did your batteries in your Teddy Ruxpin when you were a kid run low and the tape started playing really slow? I don't know. I want to run up and give him a hug and be like, buddy, it's going to be okay. This is a joke. But he's taken this on as some kind of personal attack on him, which it has not been. It's just, I will not agree with him that this is a real term. So, okay. Let's grab our 50 amp Anderson plug universally modified plug adapter here. And let's hook this up and test it. And if it powers up and works and no smoky smoke come out, hey, we're going to put a power wire upgrade in this thing and we're done. So what we have done here is, let me come grab this trace. Put this on diode check again so it makes noise for you all. Now we touch this trace and we don't have a beeping noise of shorting, and I can push on the trace and it's not shorting. But when I turn on the power switch, seeing about 4 ohms or 0.4 ohms worth of resistance. So actually, what are we doing ohm resistance wise? Reattach that too here before I get much further along. Yeah, 6 ohms. So what I'm reading is the coil of the key-in transistor going back through the transistor to ground. It's a PNP or an MPN, yeah, PNP. But that negative leg still circles around, so that's what I'm reading there is when I push the button in. So it's not a dead short. All right, let's check everything, because I just flexed this board, and this wire comes from this trace here. Wow. Wow. Look at this. I thought it broke off. It didn't break off. It just wasn't soldered worth a damn. Look at that. Oh yeah, you can see where it just peeled right off the board. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, okay. All right, let's hook it up and run it. Fixed. Okay. Let's hook this up and just put a little schmoo through it, because I am interested if there's anything else broken, like some pop pills or something. Let's get the FLIR started on its path to working for us for the day. You know, the model that I used to have, I could turn it on and have it on almost immediately. This thing here, man, it boots like a freaking Commodore 64, dude, or an old VIC 20 or something, or an Apple IIe. It's like loading, 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 loading. That thing cost almost as much as I spent on my last motherboard and a couple hard drives. These are absurd. This model here is like 11 or 1200 bucks now, but when I bought it, it was like $1,800. You think that they could come up with a little bit faster booting process. Is what it is. Okay, so we're gonna go over here. 1000 watt slug and peak, 1000 and average, 5 watt slug and reverse, back from the bird, 10,000 watt dummy load. Of course, the Texas Star 500 in the middle. We're gonna start out with our RCI 2950 driving into it this morning. Everything's nice and cool at 68 degrees. Now let's see if the Magic L smoke comes out here in a second. Hello, 1 2 1 2. We got a good pass-through tune. So if I show you on camera, hello, 1 2. Hello, 1 2. We're looking at this watt meter. It says the RF can pass through the amplifier with little to no effort. Oh yeah, we're fixed. Hello, how'd it go? So our volt amp gauge over here, which is an RMS reading gauge, hello, 27 amps roughly. We're making hello, about 390 watts worth of power with 20-ish watts worth of drive. Okay. Hello. Okay, dial watts working good. I knew I put those on backwards. But darn dyslexia kicking my ass first thing in the morning. Okay. Hello, 1 2. Now dial a watt is dial a watt. Hello. All right. Delay. Nothing's getting hot that shouldn't be. But attenuator's getting a little warm. All right, we're done. We're all downhill from here. Let's go in here and do our power wire upgrades real quick. Let's see if we can salvage this plug, which I'm pretty sure we can. We are on the upper crust of scum of what this can handle. This 50 amp plug, I normally would pitch a fit about it, but oh, it's got to be 100 and... Listen, this thing pulls on sideband, fully chooched out, about 100 amps worth of shmoo peak, okay? It's almost double what this thing's rated for. And if we had a driver transistor in here, that's 125 amps peak on sideband, fully shmoo driven out. This is the wrong plug to have. We're going to stick with this plug because that's what this gentleman's got. And I don't want to put any more burden on him, any more dual burden or unduly burden than necessary on him to get him back on the air. I just want to send him a product that's going to run great and he can have fun using it from now until the end of time. So we're not going to get too overly nitpicky. Look at that. Whew. Top shelf at Texas Star these days. That one's loose too. Okay, so we'll tighten up our coax connectors and do a power wire upgrade, and we'll be back. I gotta wonder about things sometimes. So I am sitting here trying to get this tab to release in here. This little guy. Come on, little guy. Come, hey, come on. It's gonna be okay. You can come out of there. You don't have to turtle up. You're not on a fat man. Come on. There we go. Okay. And I went and I pulled on this wire and it just went. Literally the only thing making connection was a couple of these strands of wire. That's hot news, man. That's... Oh well, It's okay. Let's put new wire in it and move on. What do you think? I think that's what we're going to do. I'm just sitting here thinking, as I was putting the new power wires in here, that they had this fuse holder, which they had fused at 30 amps, which is woefully inadequate, going to another fuse holder, these two here. We're going to bypass those. If you guys are going to put a fuse on something, let's be smart about it and put it at the battery where it's actually going to do you some good, versus at the amplifier where it's going to do you no good. Fuse here does you no good. And personally, I'm not a big fan of fuses. I'd rather you guys do like a 150 amp breaker at the battery. So you can push a button and disconnect the whole circuit, or have the option to reset it. Battery is always a better option. If you're running this on a power supply, the power supply's got crowbar protection and there's no need for this at all. But to my customer, I'm going to send this back just in case you have another use for it. I have no use for this. This is a fire hazard. The little pressure connections that are in here, and this is no good. It's no good. Okay, so we got the power supply cranked up. Once again, we're on the 1000 watt slug in peak, 1000 in average, 5 watt slug in reverse. Now this does have DEI 2879s. What are they? 20 DO9s is what it's got in it for transistors. So we're going to run the variable all the way open. Let's see what we get out of this for power. Hello, audio. This box gets with it. Look at this. Okay, these are all the Hollywood smoke and mirror ghost watts. Let's turn the amp off first. Hello, 1, 2. We're doing 30 watts, and we're at 15, what? 15.2. So the reason we run at 15.2 is after the voltage and current gets through all the connectors and down through all at the transistors, they're seeing probably 14.8, 14.5. So, hello, 1, 2. Hello, 1, 2. Hello, 1, 2. Okay. Let's put this thing on sideband real quick. Hit the delay. Hello, 1, 2. We're pulling about 70 amps over here on the meter. Hello, wow, 68 amps on sideband. So math tracks a little bit. It's working. Everything on this is working fine. This is about a 55, maybe 60 watt max drive box. The DEIs, the early versions of them sucked. Okay. Even the later versions of these kind of suck. But these transistors are obviously working and working fairly well, so let's address the ghost watts in the room. So here's our spectrum analyzer. We're set 500 megahertz wide. Here's the radio. Here's the amp. 1111, 11111. A little bit of dirt, not a lot. I mean, we're reading down to negative, what is that? 50, almost 60 dBm down. And the second and third order harmonics are at 41 and 45 dB. It's not too bad. I've seen way worse out of these newer models, so it's working. I'm pretty happy. I think he's going to be able to have a lot more fun with it down the road. So this is RO number 1. Let's do one more thing here. There we go. Well, my man, you're all good. I'm going to put the tins on it. We're going to get it all boxed up, and I'm going to get it sent out of here today no matter what, because I want to make sure it makes it home. I appreciate you sending this up. Guys, this is RA number 1. We're going to start working on them, and we're going to go fairly quickly here. I got a couple really big projects going on in the background, so we're going to be bouncing back and forth between these other side projects that are kind of carryover from last year and the RO numbers. So on that note, let me very quickly say thanks to Excess Power, Siglant, Bird, Coaxial Dynamics, MechMan, our good friends over at Penta Labs. I've got a sticker coming for them. They're probably going to occupy this little section over here. Anyhow, big shout out to the Patreons. Thanks you guys for making it so that I can do ad-free videos now. I'm serious. There's enough of them now to where I can forego the revenue from YouTube and just make it so that the videos have no ads in the middle of them. Give me a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, you might want to think about it. I got a bunch of cool shit coming up. Make sure to hit the bell so you get notified. Gentlemen, on that note, I'm going to say my name is BBI. Big thanks to every single one of you. I appreciate you guys. I honestly care about you guys, and I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see ya. Click, click.